In this section of notes, we're going to go over our relative pronouns and a couple of tricks on how to use them. To understand how we use relative pronouns, we have to first understand what an antecedent is. So an antecedent is the noun, pronoun, or phrase the relative pronoun is going to refer to. So if we look at a couple of examples, in the first one, el hombre que trabaja aquí es mi hermano. El hombre is the antecedent because that's what que is referring to. In the second example, Pedro fue a hablar con la profesora Umbral, quien siempre tiene tiempo para sus estudiantes. La profesora Umbral is the antecedent, that's who quien refers to. And in the last example, me cayeron muy bien los turistas a los que conocimos en la excursión. Los turistas is the antecedent because that's what a los que is referring to. So there's a little trick to remembering when to use certain relative pronouns. So we use them based on their length and their distance from the antecedent. So the shorter they are, the closer they're going to need to be to the antecedent. Que is our shortest relative pronoun, so it's going to come closest to our antecedent. We can use que to talk about people and objects. So because que is short, it comes immediately after our antecedent when nothing separates them. However, there are times when you can separate que from the antecedent with a short separation, like a comma or the prepositions a, de, and en. But the only time that you can do this is when your antecedent is not a person. If your antecedent is a person, you can't have any separation at all. So let's take a look at some examples. Los paquetes que están en la mesa. Que comes immediately after your antecedent, los paquetes, and there's no separation. Los abogados que conozco. Que comes immediately after the antecedent, los abogados, with no separation. And finally, la casa que compré. Que comes immediately after, without separation. And in these examples, que refers to both people and objects. So quien and quienes come after the antecedent, and the antecedent has to be a person to use this. You can't use quien and quienes with objects. Quien is used when your antecedent is a singular person, and quienes is used when your antecedent is more than one person. So there has to be a little bit of distance between the quien and the antecedent because this is longer. So usually it's going to be separated by a comma, a, de, con, some preposition like that. So a couple of examples of when we would use quien and quienes. Busque a los estudiantes a quienes vi ayer, pero no los encontré. So I have quienes because I'm talking about estudiantes, and it's separated with a. El empleado a quien conocíamos ya no trabaja aquí. So again, we have quien referring to el empleado, and that is separated with a. And then in our last example, Pedro fue a hablar con la profesora Umbral, quien siempre tiene tiempo para sus estudiantes. Again, quien because it's one teacher, and the separation in this example is just the comma. So our next relative pronoun are the el, la, los, las, que. So because these are longer, they're going to be some distance from the antecedent. Usually they're going to be separated by sin, por, para, or en. And these are going to be used when we want to clarify when there's more than one possible antecedent in a sentence. So we can use the el, que, and la, que to clarify also. So in the examples, if we look at the first one, no es el banco en el que deposité mi dinero. So in this example, our antecedent and relative pronoun are separated by en, and we're clarifying which bank it actually is. In the second example, esas no son las razones por las que no puedo acompañarte, our antecedent and our relative pronoun are separated by por. And then in the final example, perdí los documentos sin los que no puedo matricularme, we have separation created with the preposition sin. Now we can also use these to clarify what the antecedent actually is. So if we look at the examples here, we have el amigo de mi prima, el que estudia física, llega mañana de Caracas. So in the first example, the LK lets us know that it's the amigo who is studying physics. So you're clarifying in that case which of her friends it is, and that he's the antecedent and not your cousin. You can switch that and say el amigo de mi prima, la que estudia física, llega mañana de Caracas. When you have la que, now you're clarifying that my cousin is the antecedent, but clarifying which of your cousins you're talking about, the one that studies physics. So the el, la, los, las, cual, or cuales, these are the longest relative pronouns, so they're going to be the greatest distance from the antecedent. And these are going to be used after compound prepositions. So here are examples of compound prepositions. Después de, detrás de, por encima de, acerca de, al lado de, antes de, cerca de, delante de, dentro de, and debajo de. So your el, la, los, or las cuales are going to come after these. There are also what are called neuter relative pronouns, lo que and lo cual. And these are going to be used to refer to situations or concepts because an idea or a situation or concept doesn't have a gender. So we use the lo in that situation. So the difference between when you would use lo que and lo cual is basically about what has or has not been mentioned. So we're going to use lo que to talk about something that hasn't been brought up before. So we don't know what the antecedent is that we're talking about. The lo cual we're going to use to refer to something that was already mentioned. So we know the antecedent when we use lo cual. So let's take a look at a few examples. No puedo describir lo que vi en la calle esta mañana. In this example, we use lo que because we don't know what you saw. We don't know what the antecedent is. Lo que dijiste no tiene sentido. Well, we don't know what you said, so again, in this example, we don't have an antecedent, so we need to use lo que. Enrique gritó en voz muy alta, lo cual le molestó mucho a su familia. So we know what the antecedent is, Enrique shouting in a loud voice, so we use lo cual. Su hija le dijo que no quería seguir estudiando biología, lo cual no le gustó para nada al señor Lara. Again, we know what the antecedent is, that the daughter decided she didn't want to continue studying bio. So that's why we would use lo cual. We also have cuyo, cuya, cuyos, and cuyas. These mean whose. And they're going to follow the same rules as possessive adjectives. So basically what that is they have to agree in gender and number with the object you're talking about. Cuando and donde are used just like they are used in English. The main thing to be careful with is that they don't have an accent mark, and this lack of an accent mark distinguishes them from the question words so that you know you have a statement rather than a question. So for example, we have ¿Recuerdas cuando encontramos la caverna? So same as we would say in English, and then again, notice the lack of the accent mark. El pueblo donde crecí ya no existe. So same as we would say in English, and again, there's no accent mark on the donde.